Alright everybody, and welcome to another episode of Would I Buy, a show where I basically try out a few of the latest demos. Not always latest, but I aim for the latest demos. Share some of my experiences of the demo and make a decision from that about whether I would personally buy it, whether I could wait for a sale, or whether I'd leave it all alone. And in this one, we are looking at Overrogue. And I'll be honest, yeah, a lot of these demos I try to avoid looking at the pictures, and I just literally downloaded it. No, I say avoid the pictures, but I did somewhat see the pictures, but I never really looked in depth. So being honest, when I first went into it, I was kind of just expecting it to be a sort of a generic type of JRPG, sort of in the vein of like old school Final Fantasy, and as it turns out, it actually is not. It is actually, it's got all the story and the characters and stuff like that, and the dialogue of what you'd expect from like a classic Final Fantasy, albeit it's not quite as in depth. It seems a little bit more light-hearted, I suppose you could say. Some of the dialogue comes, I gotta admit, some of the times I was looking, it was a little bit cringy, but that was very few moments. But beyond that, I'd say some of the characters I kind of liked, but yeah, it was just some of the dialogue was a little bit strange. It sort of reminds me a little bit of a bit like classic Final Fantasy, although the story itself is not like a classic Final Fantasy. It seems to revolve around the aspect of, I don't know, a character that was once an all-powerful, I don't know. You can tell I never really take on board a lot of these stories, but essentially I just sort of focus on the goal, and I think it was to gain 6 something. Oh my god, I am explaining this really well. But in order to do that, they essentially go and challenge labyrinths. Yeah, I'm probably making no sense, and to be fair, I'm probably really butchering what the story is about, and it might get a lot more in depth, and it might get a lot. Ooh, what is going on today? I'm tired. Must be that. So yeah, in order to find these, they got to essentially challenge and go through all these different labyrinths. Now, in each of these labyrinths, it doesn't follow a traditional dungeon like obviously Final Fantasy after all, because as I said, this is a card-based situation. So it's actually the whole game's played using cards, and it's kind of nice actually to play. I mean, there are a lot more card games these days. Not all of them I've obviously played. Like, naturally, I did play all stuff like it back in the day with original Pokemon cards. There was Yu-Gi-Oh! I think Yu-Gi-Oh's a popular one these days when it comes to cards. So, I've not played a lot of these like card-based RPGs or deck building. Although, I kind of like it in this game that it kind of isn't literally all that. It kind of still sort of relies a little bit on luck, and like as you play through the dungeon, I think you can like buy permanent upgrades or something to add to your deck, but at the same time it also relies a little bit on luck of when you are going through the dungeon itself. So it's sort of, like I say, I think I've said in a previous video, I try to look at some of these type of games as if you were playing a board game, or in this case it would be just a normal card game. And I like it that it does have that element of, I suppose you say it has that element of luck, but at the same time you can still sort of develop a bit of a reasonable strategy as well. And it does seem to have that element where you can upgrade and better your deck. Now, I'll be honest, I thought I was doing alright and understanding everything. It seems very, very simple, just the card base. It was pretty much down to you have your characters, they essentially get so many turns, and obviously based on the card that you pick, it uses up so many, I suppose you could say actions. I'll call it actions. So let's just say on your turn you have 3 actions. So one card might have it only use 1 action. Another card might require 2. I'm probably not explaining it really well here, but that's essentially it. So you get that little bit of strategy from that. And essentially as you make your way through the dungeon, you gain encounters, and yeah, you can sort of make decisions there and essentially buy new cards to add to your deck. And yeah, I'll be honest, I'm struggling to sort of explain it here, I suppose. That's because I kind of got a little bit confused after it. I don't understand how the permanent upgrades sort of came about and how they came to play, because I presume that once you die, you are booted out. And now I was a little bit frustrated at times where the moment you're sort of booted out, you seem to lose all that progress. That was a little bit frustrating, but at the same time, I kind of tried not to let it get to me too much, because I essentially tried to treat this like, you know, it is luck. That was just the luck of the draw. I played through this game, and it just didn't play out. And obviously you get to the end, you beat the boss, and that's it, you completed that labyrinth. Now, obviously beyond that, when you go back to the main story, it tends to go into a bit more of like your traditional type of JRPG. You've got your shop and places like that where you can go and buy new upgrades or buy new cards, I think, to add to your deck then. So there is that element that you get, you know, new cards to add to your deck. And I kind of like that, and at the same time it allowed you to, I think it'll allow you to take out quests, a lot more quests, and I kind of liked that you could essentially just pick a labyrinth and that, you know, sends you straight into the next challenge. And there seems to be a lot of these pick up and play type games here at the moment. It doesn't seem like the type of game where I would be playing it again for the story. As much as I kind of liked the characters, the characters themselves are quite interesting, and yeah, I have no problems with that. It's just unfortunate in that situation that the gameplay itself, it's not one that I could sit and probably play for like hours on end, so it's again one that I'd have to say pick up and play. However, that's not always a bad thing, because I'm hoping that if people have watched a couple of the videos now, I don't mind a good pick up and play game. And in this situation, I do actually really like this. So even though it's not one that I will play for hours and hours and on end, I think it's one that I probably would enjoy and I'd get into, and I think I'd enjoy building up my deck. So if I were to go off, would I buy it? Yeah, you know what, I did actually enjoy it, and I think for the price, I can't remember the price on top of my head, for that price point I would say it was not that bad, and I actually would buy it. I think I'm only saying I'd buy it because it's a reasonable price. If it were more expensive, I would say I probably could have waited. It's not the best card game I've ever played, so, but I did have fun with it. But yeah, that is my opinion, and if you are into your deck building or card based games, I mean, I would say if you're into your RPG, but it didn't really feel much like in terms of RPG. I'm sure maybe it'll get more in depth. I'd give it a try if you're into RPGs, I will say that. But otherwise, likewise, I will say if you're into your card building games, also give it a try. But that's just my opinion. Yeah, sorry, I'm a little bit tired at the moment, so I apologize for that. And yeah, let me know what you think. Have you played the game? Would you want to play it? Are you into your card games? And as always, I will see you guys on the next one. Laters.